Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfrey, and I am your host per usual. Thank you all very much for tuning in. I appreciate the heck out of you. Anything you can do to interact with the product is always appreciated. So like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review. You all know the drill there. As a minor note, that's especially true if you happen to be on YouTube, which is apparently now like not really counting views if there's not some interaction with it, which is a deeply inelegant solution to the problem that they're trying to fix with this, but I don't know what to tell you. They're gonna do what they're gonna do over there, so whatever. On the agenda tonight, we have UFC 318. We have a review of that. We have a preview for UFC on ABC 9. The UFC will be back in Abu Dhabi, and they've got a pretty good free TV card. Then a little bit of news, some brief thoughts from me on boxing, because there was a fair amount of boxing over the weekend, some of which was really good. And, the usual, fairly, for a bigger pay-per-view at least, fairly quiet news-wise, apart from everybody and their dog saying, I want to fight at the White House. And most of you people can't even get security clearance to get to the White House. I mean, let's just not, please. Anywho. Yeah, I think that's everything as far as that goes. So let's jump into this, shall we? I don't know how long we're going to be here for, but we're going to find out. You already know, because, you can see the runtime. And I can't, because I'm recording it. So we'll figure it out. All right, UFC 318 from Louisiana, for New Orleans in particular. First time in like 10 years the UFC had been there. I did make two changes to my predictions. Main event, looking at Max Holloway next to Dustin Poirier, he looked more like a, proper lightweight. I think the other thing that kind of struck me, I heard a few different analysts talking about this. Just if you watch the second fight between Max and Dustin, then watch Max's last, like, 3 fights. And I know he doesn't win all those, but like, look at the difference in his ability. I know that right now Max is not nearly on like the run that he was back when he was featherweight champion and he moved up to lightweight briefly to fight Poirier for the interim belt. Like, I get that where he is right now is not like the height of his, would you say, like, critical success, or he's not collecting the most hardware maybe. But if you look with a critical eye, there's a lot about his game right now that might actually be at the best version of itself. Which is kind of scary in some respects, but, So that, I swapped my opinion there. The other one I changed my mind on, this is a weird one, but Daniel Rodriguez and Kevin Holland. And for a couple of specific reasons. One, I was really kind of hemming and hawing about that internally when I recorded the show. I can't tell you guys. I feel like I owe you all an apology for the last episode. I was having a bad week. I didn't even realize much of that until like later. About Wednesday when I finally kind of got out of the funk. Um, at least started getting, I shouldn't say got all the way out of it because that's a bit of an exaggeration. But that's when I kind of started going in the other direction. I don't know if Sunday or like, I don't know. Sunday would have been kind of the low point. Then again, I kind of like pulled myself out of it. Um, Eventually, to the point where I am now at least. But that one, the other thing that, so partially, part of me was really kind of going, you got that one wrong. The other reason, I think this is what I was like keying into subconsciously at that point. This is Kevin Holland's fourth fight in a somewhat inadvisably short period of time. That's usually about the point at which Kevin Holland starts to suffer. And he did. And that's kind of how that played out here. So, uh, man, I got lucky on that one. Because otherwise, I would have got the entire main card wrong. Yeah, I mean, again, the main event, just I just started feeling Holloway more and more and more over the week. But that Rodriguez and Holland one, like I actually feel okay about changing my pick there. Not just because I got it right, but like the reasoning. Um, yeah, the rest of that main card, that tore up my. I was feeling pretty good going into that. Um, some of that's easy to do though. I mean, man, the number of just mismatches on the prelims. The closer we got to them, the more I realized, like, man, there's a lot of setup fights there. And I don't mean to imply that there's any fights being thrown, but it's just more like the intent behind the matchmaking um, became clearer the closer we got to a lot of those. So, and some of those still even then got a little bit dicey, but mostly it was, oh, we know who we want to win, and gave them fights that were imminently winnable. So then, you get onto the main card, and a lot of the old guys that they were kind of like, all right, let's start moving you a little bit more towards the door, kind of just weren't ready for whatever reason. So, yeah, ultimately for that event, 10-4, which, like I said, I was feeling okay about that coming out of the prelims. The only prelim I missed was Crute and Procneo, which, all right, I will accept getting that one wrong. Um, the Veretanikov fight, I mean, I did not score that for him, and he fought like an idiot, but we'll get to it when we get to it. But apart from that, I felt pretty good. Um, yeah, then that main card hit, and it's like, man, after those first two, it's like, yeesh. And then Rodriguez got it done, but then Costa, like, suddenly proves he's not completely washed. So, yeah, that got rough. Ultimately, so year to date, 218, 71 with 170 and 1 with 1 no contest. As we have passed the halfway point of the year, I like seeing double digits in the wins. Wish this one would have been better. Um, which of those should I have gotten right that I got wrong? Okay, honestly, Pitbull. I think that's the one I should have given more credence to his ability to win that because Dan Ige is a good fighter. I certainly don't mean to imply that he's not, but he was not going to be in a position to replicate what some of the guys who have really troubled Patricio have done. So I should have given that a lot more consideration than I did. The others, I was going to eat the L. Nothing I can do about that. Nobody bats 1,000 on these. So, yeah, so that's where we are. Let's get into the fights in particular then. Man, I don't know how I want to talk about the main event. Let me talk about the fight first. It was a good fight. I think this was the best fight of the night. The UFC gave fight of the night to the third best fight on this fight when it was all said and done, to my way of thinking. Um, I don't know why they did it that way, but that's what they did because that's how they wanted to play it. Because the UFC would rather reward two mid-tier guys having just a sloppy bar fight than, you know, high-level fighting and technique and momentum swings. Like, what did this fight not have? I don't know. I'll get more annoyed if I think about that more. Anyway, Max Holloway defeats Dustin Poirier, unanimous decision. 249-46s. It's fine. 48-47, that's where I was. I'm not even entirely sure that, because I gave Poirier rounds 2 and 4, and I gave Max 1, 3, and 5. You could swap 3 and 4, I think, and not be like way outside the realm of possibility there, but Max definitely deserved to win the fight. He got to the body early and often. When he struggled was when he stopped. Actually, he's really struggled when he stopped kicking. Anytime he was kicking a lot, he had a lot of success. Had a really nice body kick going. When Poirier would try to get into range, especially because Poirier throws his rear hand as the lead a lot, countering that with a body kick, especially if you feel good with your range, yeah, is a very, very viable thing. I think we got a few ankle kicks out of these two guys. More Holloway. Um, Kicking the ankle is a weird thing. Um, it started to come into fore a little bit in like kickboxing. You throw a feint that gets the guy trying to check with his lead leg. Then, as the leg is coming back down, you you kick them in the ankle. Like before, you don't even really have to get the leg to the ground. You just kind of kick it in the air. And apparently, that really sucks. I haven't, had it happen to me yet. But some kickboxers are starting to make use of that, and that's not an accident. So there was that. Max's hand speed and combination work is still good. Really, it was the body work that stopped a lot of Poirier's forward momentum and kind of just kept Max really busy, really effective. Poirier definitely had his moments. He hurt Max with a right hook in the second round. It was a really nice combo he threw to get there, actually. Did kind of the shifting thing where he throws the left hand and steps through, but this time instead of following up with a jab and then the right hand, threw a left uppercut. So steps through, kind of throwing the left, in close, waits, left uppercut, right hook, jumps the guillotine because of course he does, doesn't get it because of course he doesn't. um, yeah, just some really good stuff from both guys all the way around. Max afterwards says, everyone who wants the BMF belt can come see me. The BMF belt. Ugh. He did a thing recently. It's like some kind of post-fight thing when he said, let's get some rankings for this thing. No. No. That thing's a gimmick. Now, you can even argue that the UFC title is just a gimmick because it doesn't actually mean what we all pretend it means, but that's a whole other thing. The BMF belt, no, it doesn't need rankings. Nothing needs to be codified about it. It's a silly thing that the UFC trots out on occasion when they want to use it to help sell a pay-per-view. Max shouldn't even, by all rights, be that champion. You got knocked out by Ilia Topuria. No, the belt wasn't on the line. No, that belt's not defined the same way a weight class belt is. And it's one of the things you said, like, you didn't see Islam walking around with the featherweight belt. Yeah, because they didn't fight at featherweight. That belt that you have is not weight class locked. It doesn't matter like that. Logically, you shouldn't have it. But, man, Max got a little bit bitter about that whole thing with Ilia Topuria, so I don't know. And he said, anyone who wants this can come see me. I'm sure there's people who will be okay with trying to do that. Then he said he wants to fight Topuria again. Look, my respect for Max Holloway's career, his accomplishments, his abilities is well documented at this point. I think he's going to find a second kind of career rebirth at lightweight. I still don't think he beats Ilia Topuria. He may not get knocked out at lightweight, but his chin seems to be going a little bit. Now, not like falling apart, but he started to get cracked a little bit more, and Max Holloway's absorbed a lot of damage. He's gotten away with it because he's got legitimately Max Holloway is one of the best chins in UFC history. Um, we don't talk about it all that much because we get dazzled by his offensive brilliance. But a lot of his success comes on the back of him being okay taking damage when he needs to. He doesn't do it recklessly, but he's taken a lot of strikes. I think he's absorbed the most significant strikes in UFC history, or very close to it. And he gets hit a lot. And he's just kind of been able to deal with it for the most part, which is fine. That's what your chin's there for. Like, don't lean on it, but you do kind of want, if you do have it as an asset to help build some of your strategy around, then okay. You don't, if you are not worried about being hit and really hurt, then you can build your strategy around that. You don't want to, if that's something you're not worried about, you don't want to fight the same way you would if it's something you're very concerned about. So, point being there, like, he did just get knocked out. He did get hurt a couple of times here by Poirier. He did in their first fight too, but I mean, their first fight he only got saved from being knocked down by the fence at one point. So my point there being, I think his chin might be a little bit cracked, and he's fighting at lightweight now, where there's a lot more power punchers at lightweight than there are at featherweight. Doesn't mean he can't find success. I fully expect him to. I genuinely do. But there's gonna have to be a few recalibrations, I think, to his game in this weight class. Which is fine. He's perfectly capable of that. In fact, it's one of the weird things about Max's career, and especially some of his losses. You just look at him and go, well, you're a highly modular, very, very skilled fighter. There's a bunch of things you could have done differently that we have seen you do differently in the past that you just didn't for some reason. I don't know exactly how much that's potentially going to affect him going forward, mind you, but I do think that if he approaches a lot of the lightweight fights with the same sort of defensive prioritization that he has at featherweight, that will not go as well for him. But, as I said, that's a thing he can work on. He's very, very good. He's still just kind of entering his physical prime. I mean, he's only 3? Yeah. Look, we think of him as older because he's been with the UFC since 2012. All but 4 of his fights as a professional have been in the UFC. In his case, that's 31. That's a big deal. But it also means we have to kind of do some assessment that this is kind of, the peak here. The next couple of years is usually the sweet spot for physical maturation, information absorbed, the sweet spot between like ability and experience. You hear a lot of guys later in their careers who are hanging on longer than they should go, man, I wish that I had known what I know now, because now my mind gets it, I understand it, and if only I had the body of a 26-year-old instead of the body of a 38-year-old, then I could really do some damage. But, almost everybody says that, and you can't do it. Like, it's not possible. The really great ones are the ones that have like a degree of that maturity and experience and understanding when they're a lot younger. This is one of the things that like, made John Jones so special. His ability to like watch tape, understand and dissect the game, married with his absurd physicality and violence. And even that, like, it dialed back as he got older. He was not nearly the violent finisher that he used to be. But, you know, everybody goes through that. Max is now kind of hitting that sweet spot, early 30s, when he's really kind of got the physical stuff in the right place and a lot of the knowledge and experience in the right place. So, like I said, I think he'll do some good work at lightweight. I think it's just really unfortunate that he's going to have to deal with Ilia Topuria, because I think Topuria beats him again. I don't think it goes exactly the same if they're fighting at lightweight, for reasons positive for both guys. I just don't think that... I think Topuria is just a really bad matchup for him in a lot of ways. But do I think Max can beat a lot of the lightweight division? Yeah. Yeah, I do. So that's kind of my thoughts on Max Holloway coming out of this. So we'll see what's next for him. He's probably going to have to fight one more time before a potential fight with Topuria. So we're going to be looking at him versus... They could do him versus Charles Oliveira again. Because those two fought years ago, and it ended early because Oliveira had a neck injury, which really sucked, because even back then I was really looking forward to that fight. You could do like Topuria and Pimblett, not Topuria, excuse me, you could do Holloway and Pimblett. There's a handful of, permutations that you could go through here. But future's still looking pretty good for Max for the next few years, but should phrase this carefully. I don't think that the bottom's about ready to drop out from under Max. That would be a severe exaggeration. But I do think it's important to note that there are a lot of years and there are a lot of miles there. I don't think he's an old man. I don't think he's washed. I do think that he will do very good work at lightweight. But I'm just... While a lot of his game is like... Big chunks of his game, like right now, look better than ever. There's a couple of things that just give me a little bit of pause. I don't know, maybe I'm being just a little bit overly observant about some of this stuff, but I'm just very aware that Max's tenure in the UFC has been long. It's been full of incredible fights. He's fought some of the very, very best fighters the sport's ever seen. But he's not going to be here forever. And I've watched, maybe this might be a little bit like the melancholy of Poirier's retirement, but dude, Tony Ferguson's about to take a boxing match with some social media guy who might beat him. Like, I've been down this road before, man. So I might be a little bit like hyper vigilant at the moment, and I'm freely going to admit that that could be a thing with me. But I watched Max here, and he looked real good. A lot of what he did looked real good. There are a few things that make me kind of go, we should really, really appreciate what we have left with Max, because I don't think it's tomorrow. He will probably fight until he's 35, so you got another couple of years, give or take. But I don't expect him to be here in 5 years. Could be wrong. Could be very wrong. But there's just something about it makes me think that, we're not in the home stretch. That's like the last little bit. I don't think we're quite there. But I do think that the end is probably starting to take shape. It's not some nebulous idea out there in the distance. Like, you're starting to see some shape and form to it at this point. And that'll be a sad day, too. As for Poirier, again, he got his big retirement moment. They aired a nice video package for him. Somebody unearthed a tweet from like 10 years ago, give or take, when Poirier said, man, when I grow up, I want to be Robbie Lawler. He got the Robbie Lawler send-off. Lawler won his last fight, but he also fought a guy that was eminently beatable. He didn't fight, I'm not trying to insult Nico Price, but he is miles and miles away from Max Holloway. And Poirier, man, what do you even say about this guy? The poetry of MMA that comes along every once in a while. The fact that Dustin Poirier was the one who welcomed Max into the UFC. 2012, Max Holloway steps in on short notice, and he loses to Poirier, gives him does some good stuff with his hands early. It's a very young Max Holloway. But not prepared for the wrestling, not prepared for the grappling, gets stuck, hit with a mounted triangle armbar. Which you don't see very often. But the guy that welcomed you into the UFC being the one that welcomes you out of it. You're getting to, if you don't mind, a little bit of like the pro wrestling parlance sneaking into the lexicon here, getting to lay down for an old rival is kind of a special thing. I mean, I'm sure he would have rather won. Part of me thinks the UFC would have rather he won, because then he could retire with that stupid belt. I don't know why I got so bitter at that thing over the last, 3 weeks, but I've never really, liked it necessarily. But, I don't know, man. Something about it the last little bit has just started to irk me. And I don't know why. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I can just tell you that that's kind of what's kicking around in my head when I think about it. But Poirier going away with it would have been the perfect excuse to just leave it alone. But, it was what it was in that respect. So Poirier getting to go out on his own terms like that before the sport forced him out of it. A lot of people said a lot of really nice things about Dustin Poirier. And all of which I think is true. You guys may not have been around long enough to appreciate this, but he was the featured player in the old Fightville documentary. I've watched almost all of Dustin Poirier's career. I remember his fights in the WEC. I covered almost all of his UFC run. I covered a giant chunk of it, if not all of it. He has no easy fights on his resume. He fought Conor McGregor 3 times. He fought Max Holloway 3 times. He fought Justin Gaethje twice. He fought Eddie Alvarez twice. His fight with Dan Hooker is maybe the best fight the UFC Apex ever produced. Go rewatch that if you haven't seen it. He fought for the belt 3 times and had the distinct misfortune of running into, in order, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Charles Oliveira, and Islam Makhachev. And he gave Makhachev a fairly tough fight. I mean, he did better than almost anybody else. The first fight between Makhachev and Volk was closer scoring-wise. But like Poirier had a lot of success against him. Made him really work for that in ways a lot of other people didn't. Just the man was an action hero in the cage. You can count on one hand the number of bad Dustin Poirier fights. Most of them are very early in his career. His run. Where do you want to start this? Okay. So after the loss to McGregor, he moves. This is 2014. He loses to Conor McGregor in the first round. He moves back up to lightweight. And has a decent start to this. He's already well respected at this point, but knocks out Carlos Diego Ferreira, TKOs Yancy Medeiros, beats Joe Duffy. That's a good fight, actually. People forget that one. Duffy gave him a few problems early, so Poirier just made it a really ugly fight and got it through it. He stops Bobby Green. Has one of those weird fights where I'm going to talk more about Michael Johnson in a little bit, but somebody put it out there that, and this has been true of Michael Johnson for a while, he's the kind of guy who in one fight might beat someone like, Islam Makhachev earlier to Poirier, and then the very next fight lose badly to Claudio Puelles, which I think is about as accurate a way to describe Michael Johnson as anything. So Johnson stops him, and then after his next fight is that really good fight with Jim Miller. It's like the only fight from UFC 208 that's worth watching. What a terrible event that was. A quick because they opened the pay-per-view. And the next fight out, so this whole event, good grief, there's one finish the entire thing. Just real quick for the whole card. Starts with Ryan LaFleur defeating Han Carnero. Ricky Glenn beats Felipe Ndover by split decision. That 30-27 for Ndover still is stupid. Islam Makhachev beats Nick Lentz. That's one of his earlier UFC fights. Wilson Hayes defeats Ulka Sasaki. This was Hayes going, I think, towards his title shot. Not a very good fight. Bilal Muhammad beats Randy Brown. That fight sucked. Dustin Poirier and Jim Miller have your fight of the night in a really good fight. Go rewatch it if you haven't seen it. It's really good. After that, Glover Teixeira beats Jared Cannonier. 30-26 across the boards. Then, at least Jacare, he submits Tim Boetsch in fairly short order. But Anderson Silva and Derek Brunson wasn't very good. Then the main event was the Jermaine Durandamy and Holly Holm fight, which, golly, that sucked. And wound up being utterly irrelevant to everything. The only fight on that entire card, unless you're doing like some deep tape study on Islam Makhachev, the only thing on that worth revisiting is Poirier and Miller, which was a really good fight. But from that, like everything after that is great. So this is 2017, the Jim Miller fight. No contest with Eddie Alvarez. Unfortunate how that ended. Good fight up until that point. He submits Anthony Pettis after that. TKO's Justin Gaethje. TKO's Eddie Alvarez. Beats Max Holloway for the interim belt. Loses to Khabib. Beats Dan Hooker in that great fight. Stops Conor McGregor. Stops Conor McGregor again. Loses to Charles Oliveira. Pretty good fight for as long as it lasted. Beats Michael Chandler. Gets knocked out by Justin Gaethje. That's a good fight for as long as it lasts. Knocks out Benoit Saint-Denis. Loses to Islam Makhachev in another really good fight. And now loses to Max Holloway. First time he's ever lost back-to-back fights. In his entire 41 fight career, he never lost back-to-back fights until his retirement fight. But just think about that for a second. That run, start with the Jim Miller fight, there's no misses. Every fight on that stretch is good to great. His entire lightweight run, again, start with the Carlos Diego Ferreira fight. That's all good. That's all really good. And it's not like his featherweight campaign was some terrible thing either. He's just not a guy that's going to be replaced. And there's a lot of those guys who are getting fairly close to the end, actually. I mean, we don't talk about it with some of them, but Eddie Alvarez is doing the BKFC thing. He's basically done at this point. Eddie Alvarez had some of the best fights. Justin Gaethje is, again, a total action hero, but he's already starting to say, I don't know what I'm still doing here if I'm not fighting for the belt. So, who knows there. Charles Oliveira is not, I'd say he's not going to be here much longer, but I think we've seen the peak of Charles Oliveira, and he's going to be one of those guys who is going to spend an inadvisably long period of time thinking he's still at his best, despite the results. I shouldn't say he's not going to win again, but some guys you get the sense that like once they start slipping, they're either going to, there's three options here, really. And two of them are very close to each other. You either just accept that you're not at your best and you move down the card. Call it the Jim Miller route. Because Jim Miller at one time was among the 3-4 best lightweights in the world. He's very clearly not that anymore, but he's not asking to fight those guys anymore either. He's okay doing what he's doing. You can do that. Not a lot of people do that, but you can. It's an option. Two, you can bow out. Like, you start slipping, and you can just go, you know what? I've had my peak. I don't want to be here and collect a bunch of brain damage. I'm out. The third one, and the one that you don't like to see, but it's the guys who just, they're not at their best anymore, but because they have to convince themselves of how good they are, they stick around longer than they should, fighting guys that they shouldn't fight. And this is what happened to Tony Ferguson. And some of these guys wind up hanging on too long at all. BJ Penn, for example. I just get the sense that Oliveira is going to be one of those guys that he's going to hang on a bit too long trying to fight in the title picture. Just a hunch I have. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong because that's the worst option. But I don't know how much longer we're going to have him. There's just kind of those action heroes that they're about ready to age out. And there's not a replacement. This kind of thing, that kind of guy is special. I'm very lucky to have watched Dustin Poirier's career. He's one of the last guys in this sport doing it, how do I say this? I'm not going to say the right way because this is prize fighting. The right way is, I'm not entirely sure such a thing exists, conceptually even. But he was one of the last, gentlemen of the sport. Not saying he never, got got heated at somebody. He did. But he never... how many problems did you ever see Dustin Poirier have? You know? How many times did he get just like deep into trash talk? He never got deep into trash talk. He never got, it just wasn't how he wanted to go about this. And he didn't. And now everyone is kind of going the other way. Everyone's trying to be all bombast. And that was never Dustin Poirier's thing. And he's one of the last guys out there at a high level making that work. Most guys can't do it. Or they choose not to. And he was just never going to compromise some of those things. And God bless him for it. He's done good things for his family, good things for his community. I wish him nothing but the best. Not a darn thing. He's going to be missed. Because guys like him are rare. They're super rare. Conor McGregor's are a dime a dozen. Conor McGregor in terms of like actual success attained, very, very rare. Conor McGregor personality types, dime a dozen. Before Conor, they were still a dime a dozen. There's elements of his like flavor of it that felt a little unique and fresh and that people have glommed onto, but that kind of guy, the kind of fighter in terms of presentation and promotion and whatnot, you find them all the time. You don't find guys like Dustin Poirier really succeeding, really making a go of it. It's a shame that that's the way that's going, but we were all better off for his fights if you watch these things. So, I wish him well, and I have talked now for way too long about just that one fight. The rest of these should go pretty quick at least, because I don't have a whole lot to say about most of them. Paulo Costa defeats Roman Kopylov via unanimous decision, 230-27s and a 29-28. I don't know what Kopylov's game plan was here, but Paulo Costa's game seems to really only work against southpaws. It's because he does a lot of body kicking, and because he does that all with his power leg, if you do that against someone who is the same stance as you, if it's closed stance, it just doesn't. It leaves you way vulnerable to counters. But if you're throwing it against an open stance guy, they have to address it, and it's not nearly it's a little bit more complicated on the counter front. So he did a lot of that, did some decent body work, like he actually looked a little bit rejuvenated here, and Kopylov just, I don't know what he was trying to do, but he really struggled here. Which is a real shame, but he really struggled. Daniel Rodriguez defeated Kevin Holland via unanimous decision, 29-28s across the board. Holland had some good success. Had a good first round. No, he had a good third. It was the third round he did good in. First round, a little bit back and forth, but I think Rodriguez took it in general, had his jab working a little bit. Second round, he drops Holland. It was what, like at the end of the. It was the end of the first. No, it was the end of the second when Holland is able to. He gets dropped a couple of times with punches, but he sort of forces some of the grappling to be a little bit more complicated, and Rodriguez escapes a bad position and gets on top and just like bombs on him for a little bit. Third round, Rodriguez slows a bit. Holland gets a little bit back into it, but not enough to win the fight. Good win for Rodriguez. This was another reminder that Kevin Holland does a lot of tall man defense, which is fine. He's a tall and lanky guy. Like, you kind of work with what you got there. But someone who knows what they're doing against those defensive habits and choices gives him a lot of problems. At featherweight, Patricio Pitbull defeated Dan Ige via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Some good grappling out of Pitbull in the first, and then in the second, little step back, slip off, and catches an incoming Dan Ige with a right hand that badly hurts him. This was just an example of Daniel Cormier kind of sucking at his job. He went from, I haven't seen a lot of his stuff in Bellator. To, okay, so looking at this is why he was successful. Like, no, man, just stop. Just stop. Fun fact about Pitbull, though, in this fight. This was his first win in a non-Bellator fight. No, the Rising stuff doesn't count because that's... But if you want to find the last time Patricio Pitbull won a fight outside of Bellator, you have to go all the way back to 2009. 2009, he beats Johnny Iwasaki. He's undefeated at this point, and his next fight is in Bellator. That's April of 2010. He goes to Bellator, and he doesn't fight anywhere else until... He doesn't win anywhere else, certainly, until this fight. Over 15 years with one place. Yeah, that's a heck of a thing. That is a heck of a thing. So, not like a transformative win for him or anything, but a good enough win. Tough fight for Dan Ige. Man, I kind of got to say this. Because Jack Slack mentioned it, and I got thinking about it. Because Ige comes out of Extreme Couture with Eric Nixick as his head coach. There's a few other guys on this card, Daniel Zellhuber, among others. But Eric Nixick is a very bright coach. And he's very, very good at analyzing what's happening in the fight and giving good advice. And really good tactical advice. And for some reason, he has just a bunch of fighters who really, really struggle to implement it. I mean, Sean Strickland kind of going to do whatever he's going to do. A little bit the same for Chris Curtis, not quite as much, but a little bit. Daniel Zellhuber, who lost to Michael Johnson, we'll talk about, I can transition here, but every time, like Eric Nixick's telling him, hey, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do. And he just doesn't. And a little bit here with Dan Ige, too. So he's got good fighters, and he is a legitimate world-class coach. But, man, that's got to be frustrating to have good fighters on your roster, but to have the right answers to some of their problems, to communicate those answers to them, and to have them just not implement must be deeply frustrating. Anyway, Michael Johnson defeated Daniel Zellhuber via unanimous decision, 29-28. A lot of body punches from Johnson, and Zellhuber didn't seem to have any ideas other than throwing a lot of kicks. And he was getting hit a lot. He got dropped in one or two, one of the first or second round. And he just kept doing the same thing the whole fight. And Nixick told him, like, okay, front kicks, show some knees, because every time Johnson throws, he bends over at the waist. Whether he's going to your body or not, he does a lot of that dropping forward. His back leg is almost never like properly planted. So he's almost always like way over that lead leg when he throws, but That's been the thing for a long time. Yeah, hey, front kicks, show some knees. With what he's doing, it's going to deter him, and you might catch him, real clean. Never, like, he'd throw one or two around, maybe. Just not doing it. Ugh, sorry. It is late. Late for me here. Anyway, that was your main card. On the prelims, Vinicius Oliveira defeated Kyler Phillips via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Kyler Phillips has a good first round pretty much every time. But if he can't get far enough ahead or like do enough damage to his opponent to like alter what they're doing, he just really struggles down the stretch. He has a very labor-intensive style in some respects, a lot of movement. And Vinicius Oliveira just walked him down rounds 2 and 3, swinging these awkward punches. This is one of those times when some of the weaknesses in Lockdog's game were laid kind of bare, even if Kyler Phillips never got close to capitalizing on them. You can start to see them. As he moves up the ranks, there's a few guys who are going to start to punish him for his habits. But you know what? Until he gets there, he's going to keep doing his thing. In your fight of the night, Brendan Allen defeated Marvin Vettori via unanimous decision. 230-27 and a 29-28. Again, this was the third fight down for me if I were to rank these fights. I'd go Holloway, Poirier, then Rodriguez, Holland, then this one. This was just kind of a sloppy bar fight. Marvin Vettori is just got a head made of a cinder block. He got busted up a little bit. There were a few fun grappling exchanges here. But Marvin Vettori's whole thing is just it's almost impossible to hit him hard enough to really hurt him. But he doesn't have like real punching power to hurt you. He's an okay wrestler. He's just okay at the vast majority of the game. And came up a little bit short here. I was not as impressed with this fight as others were, but that's just me. Welterweight, Nikolai Veretennikov defeated Francisco Prado via split decision, 29-28. I did not score this fight for Veretennikov. He had a good first round, but he really struggled in the second and third. He kept spinning. First time he threw a wheel kick, it kind of landed. Okay. Tried it again, missed badly a couple of times in the second, at which point you have to have the presence of mind to go, okay, no more. We're done with that. We're done with that. And he kept throwing it, and he kept getting his back taken and then ridden down, and he probably should have lost this fight. Atebe Gautier defeated Robert Valentin via TKO 110 of the first. Good grief. Gautier just clobbered him from pillar to post for as long as this lasted. Welterweight, Islam Dulatov defeated Adam Fugit via knockout. Yeah, punched him out 4-6 of the first. Dulatov looked pretty good. Light heavyweight, Jimmy Crute armbarred Marcin Prachnio 441 of the first. Nice armbar here from Crute. He had full mount. You don't usually see the isolating the arm and then instead of like spinning to sit for it, you just kind of crawl up into it, and that's what he did. Took a bit to actually get the finish of it because his legs weren't in proper position, but he got there eventually. At heavyweight, Ryan Spann defeated Łukasz Dreszki via guillotine choke, 237 of the first. Crappy heavyweights. Middleweight, Bruno Ferreira defeated Jackson McVeigh. No, sorry. Ferreira had the crawling up armbar. Jimmy Crute did not. How did he get his? Is that from his back? I don't think it was from his back. I don't remember. I don't remember the specifics. It was a nasty armbar when it finally got locked in, but yeah, sorry. Ferreira was the one who had full mount, isolated one arm, and then like crawled up into it, and then the way he hit it like forced McVeigh to belly down real fast, and that's a real bad way to try. It's a real bad position to try and escape the armbar from. And kicking everything off, Carly Judice defeated Nicole Cagliari via TKO. Really nasty knee to the body and punches 130 of the third. Um, really nice body work from Judice the whole fight. Some nice punches. Really, she started timing some nasty intercepting knees to the body, and those just suck. Front kicks, a lot of front kicks, and just kind of broke Cagliari down until got her near the fence, and then Cagliari started trying to throw a punch, and the intercepting knee to that was, what's the one I usually reference about this? Evan Dunham and Francisco Trinaldo. If you've never seen that finish, look it up. Thank me later. But Trinaldo times this intercepting knee with uh, like an overhand. I just had his name and I just blanked on it, but I already said it, so I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it. And the knee goes like right into the liver, so it's not just well positioned, but if you get hit in the liver and like is in the body at all, when you're extended throwing a punch, like all the muscles are not only engaged, but they're like stretched. It reduces a lot of your ability to absorb impact, and Evan Dunham dropped like he'd been stabbed. This reminded me of that. So that was that. Let's see. Your bonuses already mentioned. Fight of the night went to Allen and Vittori, which was some BS. Performances went to Gauthier, Dulatov, and Judice. You were spoiled for choice on the prelims. Until I said that the first round finish club would have to reload on gift baskets, after which we just got decisions the whole rest of the way. No issues with those ones. Again, you could sub any combination of those in. Any combination of the finishes could get performance bonuses and would have been A-okay with me. So, full report, MMA Zone to 411mania.com. Go give it a read, stop by, say hello. Y'all know the drill on that, and I talked for way too long about this, but I had stuff to say about Holloway and Poirier, so I will not apologize. I'll simply acknowledge that's what happened. All right. Moving on. UFC on ABC 9 will be coming our way this Saturday. There's a morning card because they're in Abu Dhabi. Let me check that real fast. Yeah, that's an earlier morning card. That's a new prelim start at noon Eastern. Okay, that's 10 a.m. for me. It's all right. I'm not going to complain. It's a good card. But yeah, that is more of a morning thing. So the main event. Minor note, but they listed like UFC 319 doesn't have a co-main event anymore. So when they did the big graphic trying to hype it up on this pay-per-view, it was like, main event, Dricus du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev, fine fight. Co-main event, TBD versus TBD at TBD weight. Like, what are we doing here? Just what are we doing? Anyway, just amused me. So, this Saturday, main event, Robert Whittaker, Reiner de Ridder. Good fight. Not going to complain about it. Happy to have it. I've been joking for a while that I'm going to be real sad when Robert Whittaker loses this fight because the MMA gods are just kind of like, I don't know if they're cursing us or blessing us, probably both, with the like inevitability at this point of the awkward, bizarre, spastic affair that would be DDP versus RDR. I just... Sorry about that. That's where MMA is in 2025. That's just kind of what we're doing. Here's the thing. Robert Whittaker should probably win this fight. I think he's the favorite. Not by a huge amount, but he's the favorite. I just I think that's where we're going, is more towards de Ridder being the guy to make a kind of a push for the belt. And it would be the funniest thing ever to me. To the memes and the clips that will come out of DDP versus RDR as like the UFC weight class championship fight. Think about it for a second. Think about how that will look. Just take a moment, visualize in your mind those two going at it. And all the that's almost a Three Stooges sketch of a fight as the UFC title fight. And that feels like where we're going. If de Ridder can force this to be more of a clinch and a ground battle, Whittaker can fight there, but that's kind of what RDR does. The more Whittaker can keep this on the feet at distance, the more it will favor him. Stay at distance, do his blitz attacks. He's got good power. I've got a lot of respect for Robert Whittaker. That should not be much of a surprise. If this were 3 rounds, I would actually favor Whittaker pretty heavily. 5 rounds with de Ridder just a little bit dicey. Whittaker also, bless him, has one finish since 2017. Like, he head kicked so his last finish was when he beat Ikram Aliskerov in June of last year. Before that, the last time he finished an opponent was in 2017 when he beat Jacare. Now, I'm not holding that too much against him. After that, his resume reads as follows. Yoel Romero, twice. Israel Adesanya. Darren Till, he probably could have finished that. Jared Cannonier, Kelvin Gastelum, Israel Adesanya again. Marvin Vittori, Dricus Duplessis, Paulo Costa. And then Aliskerov, and he's coming off the loss to Chimaev. I'm not going to hold not being able to finish those guys too much against him. The Till fight, that was before Till got really kind of washy, and those two kind of like messed up each other's knees too. The Gastelum fight, Gastelum's not easy to finish. And Vittori already mentioned, like, he's super hard to finish. But that is a thing that needs to be acknowledged. Like, he's not the finisher that he used to be. It's not impossible, but it's not the threat that it used to be. And de Ridder, de Ridder's only losses were both to Anatoly Malikin. And both of those fights were at, like, one was heavyweight, one was light heavyweight. So one was 225, one was 205. So he's never lost in this weight class. Now, granted, de Ridder is facing the best guy he's ever fought by a significant margin. I do respect, first of all, Malikin, again, up a few different weight classes. And I'm not trying to throw all the guys he's fought in the UFC under the bus, but Gerald Meerschaert, Kevin Holland, and Bo Nickel are not at all Robert Whittaker. So, he's taken a big step up. But I think some of his style with 5 rounds, it's just kind of a rough ask. He seems to have learned a little bit from the Meerschaert fight in particular about what his conditioning needs to be at and how to make that work a little better. Because even though he won that fight, like, they both were just exhausted by the end of it. When you do as much grappling as they were doing, you're going to get tired even if you're in good shape, but he seems to have smoothed some of that out since then. I can't believe I'm going to do this. All right, I'm going to asterisk this in case I wake up tomorrow and look at my somewhat sleep-deprived self and say, you moron, but I'm going with de Ridder. I just feel like there's something kind of pushing us towards DDP and RDR. Could be very, very wrong. Look, Kamzat could upset that apple cart. Whittaker could upset that apple cart. Actually, they both do. Will still get it. But it being for the belt is just kind of what I think amuses me the most. So I'm at the moment tonight. I may feel very, very differently tomorrow, as I mentioned, but as it sits at the moment, I'm gonna actually lean towards de Ridder. Your co-main event, bantamweight Petr Yan and Marcus McGee. Bit of a weird fight rankings-wise, but somewhat understandable in terms of like who's willing to fight. Marcus McGee, I've been fairly impressed with. 10-1 overall, 4-0 in the UFC, coming off a really good win over Jonathan Martinez. Because I think pretty highly of Jonathan Martinez. Yan, former champion, former interim champion. 2-fight winning streak. He should have beat Sean O'Malley. Look, I'm willing to accept that the fight with him and Aljamain Sterling for the bantamweight title, so not the first one where he was DQ'd for the illegal knee, which was his own stupid fault, but that second one, which I scored for him, for the record, I accept that, you know what, could be wrong about that. Certainly close enough, you can give it to Sterling. He should have won the Sean O'Malley fight. He lost to Merab, fine. But he should have won that O'Malley fight. This is going to be about finding out if Yan has been slipping a lot. Won his last couple, and they were good wins over Song Yadong and Davison Figueiredo. But I don't know. Those guys are kind of more on the veteran side of things in terms of like how established they are, not just in like the rankings or the minds of fans, but in their game. Their games are kind of entrenched at this point. Marcus McGee does not have that same problem. Gigantic step up in difficulty for McGee. I'm going to lean towards Yan as I'm sitting here right now, but if Yan shows up and kind of takes this one lackadaisically, McGee could easily have something for him. So I think the odds have McGee as a slight underdog. No, Yan's a fairly decent favorite there. Okay. Man, somebody needs to update best fight odds. It's what I normally use for this kind of stuff, but it is in dire need of like proper updates for some of these things. So yeah, that's a good fight. I'm fine with it being where it is. Don't sleep on Marcus McGee there. Like odds have Yan at like minus 400. I'm okay with Yan being the favorite. I understand him being even a fairly notable favorite, but that McGee's better than those odds indicate. Bantamweight next, Bryce Mitchell makes his debut in the weight class. Coming off of being choked out by John Silva with a nice ninja choke. He's fighting Said Nurmagomedov. He's coming off of a loss to Vinicius Oliveira. And Said Nurmagomedov is pretty good, but he missed a lot of time after that Muin Gafurov win. Saidikub Kakramanov gave him some problems too before Nurmagomedov found the ninja choke. I'm going with Nurmagomedov here. I don't know what Bryce is going to look like at bantamweight. It's kind of how that breaks down there. He could win this fight. He absolutely could. His grappling is quite dominant when he gets to it. He's just struggled to really be able to impose it recently. And kicking off the main card, we have Shara Magomedov and Marc-Andre Barriault. This is a gimme. Gimme's the wrong word. This is a fight designed to showcase Magomedov. Marc-Andre Barriault is not a bad fighter, but he's hittable. He's a little chinny. Most of his game revolves around trying to wear you down, and that just does not seem like a winning strategy against Magomedov. I mean, Barriault was on a 3-fight losing streak not that long ago, with 2 of those being pretty gnarly knockouts. He beat Bruno Silva his last time out, but Bruno Silva is way washed. This is a showcase for Magomedov. On the prelims, we have Nikita Krylov and Bogdan Gushkov. Nikita Krylov, I fought in April, lost to Dominic Reyes. Yeah, it was rough. Had a 3-fight winning streak before that. Gushkov, 3-fight winning streak. The problem is this is a step up in class towards the level of his UFC debut. He lost to Volkan Oezdemir. He rebounded okay, beating Zach Ponga, Ryan Spann, and Billy Elkanah, but Krylov is more akin to Volkan Oezdemir. Krylov may be coming up on the washed status, but I'm going to go with Krylov here, and we'll just see how that goes. Because if he drops this one, that might be a real bad sign for him. Strawweight, Amanda Hebos and Tabitha Ricci. So Ricci's coming off a loss to Yan Xiaonan. That's understandable. Her only strawweight losses are a split decision to Lupe Godinez and then Yan Xiaonan. Hebos, at this point, I think we've just seen her best. Yeah, she's 1-3. Her last 4 losses to Macy Barber, Rose Namajunas, Mackenzie Dern. I'm not super sold on this, but I'll go with Ricci. Let's see, welterweight, Muslim Salikov and Carlos Leal. That's Leal Miranda. I think he just goes by Carlos Leal. I got to double check that. Because if that's who I think it is, I respect the heck out of Salikov, and especially his late kind of run he's been on recently. But yeah, Leal is 22-6. He is who I was thinking of. He's only gone 1-1 in the UFC, but he gave Fakhretdinov a decent little fight to the point where people thought he lost that one. And he put a beating on Alex Morono. Now, I get that Morono is, kind of washed at this point, but and let me have a quick look at Salikov here. 21-5, 2-fight winning streak. He's 41. Wins over Santiago Ponzinibbio and Song Kanan. Odds are pretty solidly with Leal, and honestly, yeah. That's kind of why I wanted to double check on him. So I'll go with Leal, but For what it's worth, I am rooting for Salikov. He is a lot of fun, for the most part. Alright, next up, Ibo Aslan and Billy Elkanah. God, who could possibly care? Aslan lost to Ion Kutalaba his last time out. Boy, that is a... 2 wins before that, but like Anton Turkali and Rafael Sirkina, like he's not beating anybody good. But then there's Elkanah, who is like barely here. Sorry, Elkanah. Second E there. Told you it's late. Elkanah's 7-2. Lost his UFC debut to Guskov. I feel like they're trying to set up Aslan. Is kind of the intent here. And I don't think Elkanah is good enough to really upset that. So we will go with Aslan and we will move on. Heavyweight, God. Okay, no, I can't be too down on this. Because you look at Martin Bidet and you go, oh, why? But he's fighting Marcus Almeida, Buchecha. So Marcus Almeida. And Buchecha is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners of his generation. Multiple-time ADCC gold medalist. Multiple time Brazilian world champion, jiu-jitsu world champion. In the gi and out of the gi. Seriously, huge long list of accomplishments for him in the jiu-jitsu world. His last jiu-jitsu match, unfortunately, he's coming off of in jiu-jitsu. He retired after losing to Gordon Ryan. But he's actually done some pretty solid work. I mean, his overall jiu-jitsu record is like 128-13. Like, stupidly good. He's fought only in one thus far, gone 5-1. One loss is to Umar Kane, coming off a win over Ali Akbari. He is when he gets going, he's quite athletic. Super talented grappler. And Martin Bidet, I'm not trying to be like cruelly dismissive, but he's 15-2. His UFC record is actually quite good, 6-1. He's coming off a win over, he's like, what, a 2-fight winning streak? Yeah. His only loss is to Shamil Gaziev because the Blob got him. Most recently, he beat Andrei Arlovsky via split decision, which could have gone either way, and who cares? And then he beat Urdan Satabaldiev his last time out. I mean, so he's not a scrub. I think Buchecha's ability to like force him to grapple is going to be his real problem, because Bidet really likes to make these kind of grindy fights where you can sort of get towards you in the pocket and his punching there is decent. But I'm going with Buchecha. I also think he'd make for the more interesting winner, but, you know, some of that's just me. Featherweight next, Muhammad Yahya and Steve Wynn. They are really trying to get Yahya a win in the UFC. He's 12-5. He's from the UAE, and we're in the UAE, but he's 0-2 in the UFC with losses to Trevor Peek and Kaue Fernandez. So to try and get the hometown boy a win, they brought in as close to a jobber as they can find. Because Wynn is 9-2. Went 2-1 on the Contender Series and then dropped his UFC debut to Jarno Erdens. If Yaya can't win this fight, he needs to go away. So, take that for what it's worth. I'm going to give Yaya the slight benefit of the matchmaking doubt here. But, man, if he drops this one, is that he needs to not be in the UFC anymore. Quick look at this fight. Huh. Yeah, it's actually with Amanda Hebus on that one. I'm sticking with Ricci, but finally found somewhere that has some of the odds, so there's that. And kicking everything, not quite kicking everything off. So we've also got Davy Grant and Damon Blackshear. Davy Grant making his once yearly appearance. Yeah, last time out was the December 24. He fought twice in 23, but generally speaking, he's a once-a-year guy. Davy Grant's usually fun. Coming off a win over Ramon Tavares. Blackshear, unfortunately for Mr. Grant, is actually pretty good. 17-7-1, 3-fight winning streak. Wins over Cody Stamann, Cody Gibson, and Alatong Hele. His losses are to... Who's he lost to in the UFC? Farid Basharat, Mario Bautista, and Montel Jackson. I'm not so sure if he doesn't get a rematch with Jackson if that one doesn't go differently. Batista was always going to beat him. So, yeah, again, I've got nothing against Davy Grant. He's usually good for a fun fight. But Blackshear seems to kind of be rolling at the moment. So I'm going to lean towards him. See, we had a few fights that kind of got weird. We were supposed to get Asu Almabayev and Ramazan Temirov. Good fight, actually. Fortunately, Temirov withdrew, and it looks like, and we now have instead Asu Almabayev and Jose Ochoa. Ochoa 8-1. See, he's 1-1 in the UFC. Yeah, coming off a win over Cody Durden. He lost to Lonnie Kavanaugh in his UFC debut. Almabayev has kind of just... I would pick Almabayev even if Ochoa had a full camp. Ochoa doing this on somewhat short notice, that's a tough ask. I mean, Almabayev's 21-3. Is coming off of his first loss in the UFC, though. Manel Kopp got him. Some controversy around that stoppage. He was losing that fight anyway, but it needs to be said. There's a little bit of weirdness around the stoppage there. I'm going with Almabayev, so... Make sure I spelled that right. I did. So that's just kind of where I'm going on that one. Odds are real close on that one, man. That loss to Kopp has some people not feeling good about Almabayev. I don't know. Maybe I should consider that a bit more seriously, but I might need to. I need to rewatch the Ochoa's UFC fight, so let me asterisk this real fast. And lastly, we were supposed to get Aaron Pico versus Movsar Evloev. That fell out. I don't have a problem picking Pico in the dark. So, should they find a replacement during the last week in the build-up to the fight, probably going to just pick Pico, but that will be somewhat pursuant to who it is, mildly, but for the general sake of right now, Pico with a... How would I note this? Let me throw this in there. Okay. That is my note that I'm not sure about that one. 99% sure, but also I kind of doubt they find someone to fight him on that short of notice. But anyway, so that is that card. Saturday morning / noon, depending on where you are in the world. Morning or literal noon if you're on the East Coast. I will have coverage in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Stop by, say hello. Y'all know the drill on that. I deeply appreciate it. Okay. I wanted to get a few boxing thoughts in here. I may cut one or two of these other things. At least one of these is getting cut from my potential rundown. All right, so let's talk boxing real fast. Because there was some stuff. Manny Pacquiao probably should have beat Mario Barrios, fought to a draw. Mario Barrios sucks. Like you're supposed to be a world title level fighter, and you're drawing with Pacquiao at this stage. Shame on you. And you know what? For the record, also nuts to those judges. I thought Pacquiao should have won that fight. The big one was Alexander Usyk becoming undisputed heavyweight champion again by knocking the stuffing out of Daniel Dubois in the 5th round. Man, Usyk's good. Alexander Usyk is one of the best boxers ever. I mean, ever. He is... You could put him as the pound-for-pound best boxer in the world right now, and I would not argue with you. He benefits slightly from heavyweight still being, heavyweight. Which is to say, dangerous, but some diminished or like deeply flawed fighters. He also fought some guys who were really good. I mean, we should just make him King of England at this point. He's fought the 3 best British heavyweights that they can put forward, twice each, and he's beaten them. He is 6-0 against those guys. He beat Joshua twice, he beat Fury twice, he's beat Dubois twice, and he finished Dubois both times. He should just be the King of England. Like, this is how you conquer at this point. He is the best heavyweight in the world right now. I don't think that's all that close. I don't think... You could put him against any heavyweight in any era, and unless you were just dealing with really weird rules, he is at a minimum competitive, if not favored. I've said this before, others have said it as well. Like, boxing's one of those, a lot of combat sports, but boxing in particular. You can take older generation fighters and move them into the modern era. Anyone who was really good back then will still be really good and really competitive and potentially world title level now. If you took Sugar Ray Robinson, brought him into the modern era, he's still gonna do exceptional work. And I think I said this about Rocky Marciano when I was making the general point. He wouldn't fight at heavyweight now. The weight classes are different. But you put him in his appropriate weight class, look at his abilities. He's not a perfect fighter, but he would mess some people up. He would mess up like world-class guys in that weight class. So, point being, you could take Usyk against any era of heavyweights. And I would favor him to beat Mike Tyson. I would favor him to beat Lennox Lewis. I would favor him over both Klitschko's. That's a little bit dicier. I would, but again, that's a little bit dicier. Lewis, too. I mean, because Lennox Lewis was great. Depending on which version of Ali, there's a big gap in Muhammad Ali's career. Mostly due to him being like blackballed and forced to sit out while he litigated with the government. But prior to that, the lightning hand speed, really good foot speed version of Muhammad Ali, that version against Usyk, I would be very interested in. The later version of Ali, where a lot of what he did was like mastering clinch work. I watched Usyk not be outdone in the clinch by Tyson Fury. Respectfully to Muhammad Ali, if Tyson Fury can't outclinch you, Ali doesn't have much of a prayer of doing it. Um, so, no. So that version of Ali, I would pretty easily favor Usyk. Usyk and Joe Frazier would be a ton of fun. But, I mean, Joe Louis, go through any era. Gene Tunney, uh, Usyk's one of the best heavyweights in the history of the sport. He is. I'm okay saying he's surpassed Evander Holyfield at cruiserweight. That's still a little bit of an open debate. Um, it kind of comes down to how you rate the guys they beat, because both of them are the only undisputed cruiserweight champions in the four belt era of boxing. And Evander Holyfield, he beat some really good cruiserweights too. So that one you can kind of go back and forth on a little bit. I'm okay saying Usyk as being higher than him on all-time cruiserweights, but they're kind of 1A and 1B. If we're talking Holyfield at heavyweight, I think Usyk clears him. Both in the career history and if they were to ever theoretically, if they were to fight. So just wanted to say it. Usyk's the man. Appreciate him while he's here for as long as he's still here, because he's the man. And wanted to say that out loud. Okay. I want to, yeah, let me be quick about this. I can be quick with this one. So PFL had their debut in Cape Town. This was their, what do they call this officially? PFL Champion Series 2? Who is naming these things? So the big couple of things coming out of here. First of all, Dakota Ditcheva beat the crap out of Sumiko Inaba. Then announced she's signed for, a few more years with the PFL. I hope they're paying her. I hope the checks are clearing. Dakota Ditcheva is one of the few bright spots in the PFL, and she's a very bright spot. She would be competitive in the UFC, top of the UFC's flyweight division. I don't think quite champion right now, mostly because I think Shevchenko's just a tough matchup for her stylistically, but you can't tell me that Dakota Ditcheva wouldn't at least be a very live option in that fight. Anyway, so for however much longer the PFL is going to be around, and boy is that's an open question. So she got a good win, and then again now she's staying with them. So good for the PFL, one of the few stars they've managed to create, someone's generating a little bit of interest. And in one of the better comebacks you'll see in a while, Costello Vanstinas defeats Johnny Eblin for the middleweight title. He was down 3-1 on all scorecards, including mine, going into the fifth. And then with less than 10 seconds left in the fight, gets the back, gets a choke, and Eblin doesn't tap, he goes to sleep. A heck of a turnaround for Vanstinas. Wanted to give him a bit of a shout out. He gutted through some tough spots and just being down to recover and pull off a heck of a comeback. So credit to him there. I don't think there was a lot else that kind of stuck out to me from this event. No, not really. But wanted to give it a little bit of a shout out there. I will pass on talking about... So something came out with Conor McGregor not too long after I did the show last week. I'll not be talking about that. Gonna pass on really opining about Diego Sanchez being arrested for felony gun charges. We'll just leave that kind of where it stands. Know that that's a thing that happened because, like, I was never a Diego Sanchez fan necessarily, but that's just kind of sad. So, all right, I'm gonna check the social medias real quick. I don't imagine there'll be anything there. Then we will do plugs and get out of here. Okay. Nope, I don't see anything new there that's relevant. So, plugs. Last week, there was a review of Superman. It was mostly Mark, Alexis, and Benjamin talking. I read a book because nobody wanted to hear me be negative about the movie, and I had my issues with it. So I kind of sat out, and I can live with that. So yeah, give that a listen. It was a good time. I yeah. This week, Mark and I think it's just the two of us. Let me check. We'll be reviewing, I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's my thoughts on that. Anywho. So we will have a review for that on Damn You Hollywood, and then the week after will be Fantastic Four, which, oy, oy. Let's see, this week regular coverage, WWE SmackDown on Friday, UFC event on Saturday, so tune in for that. We'll be back here next week to review UFC on ABC 9, and sure that's going to line up. Yeah, August 2nd. Yeah, we will preview UFC on ESPN 71. Oh no, we're back in the warehouse. Amir Albazi and Tetsudo Taira is not a bad fight. What else is on there that doesn't suck? Let's see. Grant Dawson and Joel Alvarez. That doesn't suck. May not be great, but it doesn't suck. Mateusz Rembeszki's fighting. That's usually fun. Rybovics and Brenner. Rinya Nakamura. I want to see how he rebounds. I don't care much about the fight, but I'm curious what he does. Yeah, it's Neil Magny and Elijah Zaleski dos Santos. We got two old men welterweights out there. Full preview next week. That is very much a warehouse card. Just gonna say it like that. Very much a warehouse card. All right. I will see y'all then. Until then, thank you for listening. I appreciate the heck out of you, and I appreciate your patience with my mental health last week. So, sorry again about that. I don't know what to do about that if it comes up again. I tend to just push through and record, but I don't know. If I'm that bad again, if I'm worse than I was last time, I'm just going to wind up doing it like the next day or something. So, if this winds up being later once or twice, I'll try to keep everyone appraised. So if you follow me on X, I'm at Winfrey MMA, and I'll try to make a note of that. All right, that's it for me. Thank you again, everybody. Stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.